Hello, everybody. Welcome to the other side of the classroom. My name is Akanksha, and this is my second attempt to make a quick short video for my Creative Project 1 demo. So here we go. My game is called UnderSouled, which is sort of like a mix of two of my favorite games, which are called Overcooked and Dark Souls. And I wanted to build a game which has a player sort of like moving around in the kitchen and be able to cook in that kitchen eventually properly, and have a setting which is sort of like a fantasy inspired setting and has like a forest and dark mystical elements. In this game so far, you'll see features like materials, lighting, pre-processing, player input, camera manipulation, some object interactions, which I'm hoping will get approved as trigger object, and some kind of animations as well. Now, before we move on to my actual game demo, I want to give a full disclaimer of all the things that I've used for this project so far. So I was able to find a lot of materials from Unity Asset Store which went with the theme that I had in mind for this game. So I used things like materials, textures, models that sort of like went with the visual quality that I wanted in the game, and I used that. So these are all the assets that I've used, and you can take a look at them here. Apart from that, of course, a lot of conversations with ChatGPT, which sort of like helped me understand certain concepts that I wanted to get into. And also, it helped me write a few scripts and debug a lot of things that I was not able to figure out on my own. So, a quick thanks to ChatGPT as well. And apart from that, I referred to a lot of YouTube tutorials, and two of those which I followed mainly were Kitchen Chaos by Code Monkey and RPG Hero Diner by Design and Deploy. Most of my scripts are from these channels, and the setup that I have are also inspired by what they've done in their videos. I wanted to understand what it takes to make a full-fledged game at this scale and the coding practices that other people follow, and that's what I learned from these tutorials. Apart from that, a lot of different concepts that I got into that we haven't explored in our class so far was taken from these other tutorials. And before I move on to the demo, just again a quick note on the fact that in no way I would have been able to design or write all the scripts that I've shown in this project, or I'll be showing in this project. And just want to give a quick thanks to all of these resources and highlight all the things that I've used in this project. Okay, so now that we have that covered, we can quickly move on to the game demo. Here's what my game looks like. Let me go into a full screen mode. And yeah, this is what my game looks like so far. You can see there's like a kitchen in the middle. Let me press play. Yeah, you can see there's a kitchen in the middle, and a player is able to move around, and a player is able to interact with these tables. These are like different food items that we have. So I interacted with this table, picked up a bread loaf, and I can put it in this table. And then same thing I can do for other food items as well. Here I'm putting a cheese block on this table, and then I can do that with other food objects as well. So yeah, a player is able to move around in the game. The camera is sort of like following the player as well. The player is able to interact with different sort of like objects here in the scene. And then you will see a few characters, sort of like monsters that I've added in my game to go with the theme that I wanted. You'll see like a zombie here sort of like patrolling the kitchen, which I thought again went with the theme and then gave like a scary and eerie vibe that I wanted to have the game convey. So here is what the zombie is looking like. It's sort of like walking back and forth, and then somewhere here you will see a bat moving around as well. Yeah, here again that bat is also moving around patrolling the kitchen. So that's mostly it in my game so far. Now I can quickly go over all the small things that I've added in this game, and then we can talk about the scripts quickly. So as for the materials, you can see all the materials are added in this setting. um, I took the models, different textures, materials, these objects, and then added them one by one. So sort of like recreated this entire 3D scene on my own. Try to visualize how a setting like this will look like, and that's what you see here. So that's about the materials, and then I can show you quickly if I go to my scene window here. Apart from these materials, I played around with a lot of lighting, and that you can see here. Yeah, Yeah, so lighting with these sort of like torches that are outside the kitchen, and then small point lights in all of these different dining tables that you see outside of the kitchen. And I learned that it's better to have like baked lighting, so that's what all my static lights will be baked. Sorry about that. Yeah, and then apart from that, I also have sort of like a spotlight that is putting light on this kitchen window so that the rest of the forest looks dark outside, but then the kitchen sort of like has that brightly lit kitchen that people can see when they're playing this game. So this is what the spotlight is doing here. And then I added post processing to make my game look a bit cooler, and this is where it's added here. I added options like bloom, some color grading, some vignette to have it like good looking effect. And you can see if I disable this effect quickly from here, the game completely looks different. So yeah, post processing helped me a lot, and it just made my game come alive and then just made it look a lot more beautiful, I think. So that's about post processing. And then for camera manipulation, I used a package called Cinemachine, and this is where it's added here. So I have this virtual camera which is sort of like following the player. If I go in my game mode again, so yeah, this is if I go here, the camera sort of like follows the player here, and then so on. There's also like a slight shake to this entire scene, which Overcooked game has as well, and that I try to replicate here. So I try to add like a noise here in the basic multi-channel and have that noise as well. So that's about my camera manipulation, and then we can quickly talk about scripts moving forward. So far we talked about materials, lighting, pre-processing, and camera manipulation. Now for scripts, you will see a lot of different things going on, so I'll try to go over them as quickly as possible. Now, the first thing that you'll see is how this player is moving around, the monster outside, this zombie and this bat. That's being controlled by this script called Monster Move, which is here. Let me just quickly open it. So yeah, all this script is doing is sort of like defining the points in which the monster has to move from and then has to reach at, and then sort of like they swap the position and start moving back and forth between that. And that's what's happening here. So patrol between points, but handling the control, and then slowly rotate, which is like handling the rotation, and then the monster starts moving back. That's what's happening in monster move. Now to the actual game objects inside of the kitchen, you will see a lot of like different objects here, mainly in terms of the tables that we have. So if I go into my prefabs and counters, you'll see how I have sort of like different kind of tables, which I'll be calling containers. So this, or like, sorry, counters. So for example, this one is like a clear counter. It doesn't really have anything on it. This one is a container counter, basically, which means that it has some kind of a food item in it. So what's happening here is I have like different variations of counters, and that's what I've defined here. So if I go into my base counter, this is what it looks like. All it has is a box collider, which is defining the boundary so that a player doesn't really go through that object. And then it also has a countertop point, which is sort of defining where an object will be placed on this counter. So yeah, and then all the other tables are sort of like prefab variants of this base counter. So I have this clear counter, which is this table. This has the visual, and the other thing it has is how you see sort of like highlighting the table in the game window. If a player is moving near this table, is sort of like highlighting it. That's what's happening in this selected prefab. It is connected with script called selected counter visual. And if you can go in this one quickly here. So all this script is doing is basically interacting with the player and checking if the player is reaching near the counter or not. If it is, then we want to show the selected prefab visual, which basically has the same visual as the normal counter, but just with a slightly different material so that it highlights the table a bit more. And then if it goes away from it, it sort of like hides it. And that's what's happening in selected counter visual. And then apart from that, I have other containers which are counter containers that are being handled here. Before that, I should quickly talk about the player as well, how the player is moving. So I'm using this new input package system from Unity and have defined all my inputs using that because I wanted to learn that. So here, if I go under my input window, this is where my new input package is working with. So I have this player input, which is sort of like defining all my actions, and my actions are here, move. So it's defining all my keys that I want to use, and then defining also like interact. So anytime if I go near a counter, it needs to interact with something. So I press E and then it works with that. It has different values. So the action type has a value because I want to read that and be able to decide things from it in my script. That's what's being defined here. And it sort of like generates an auto generated script for me called player input actions here. Again, it's just defining all the key bindings that I have defined in that window previously. And all this is mapped with my actual player script, which is here. A lot of different things are happening in this script, so I'll try to break it down as quickly and neatly as I can. So the main functions that are handling the movement are called perform collision detection and movement. And what's happening is this script is taking a game input object and then sort of like using that to manipulate the movement. It's also tied with the script called game input, and here where my actual actions are defined. So this is sort of like calling the input actions that I showed you in that previous window, enabling that map here, and then enabling the person to interact with it. So it's again seeing all the different values from there and then passing it in the input vector, and then this goes back to the player script, and then this is where the movement is happening. It also has a raycast option, which is sort of like detecting when it's near an object or no, and then defines how far a player can actually move to. So that's what's happening in player. And then apart from that, I have kitchen object and kitchen object scriptable objects. I basically didn't want to hard code any of my kitchen objects. And by kitchen objects, I mean is all these food items that you see here. So this is a bread loaf, this is a cheese block, this is a meat patty. These are all defined in my kitchen objects, and for that I use a scriptable object. So I have a script called kitchen object SO, which is here. It sort of like defines all my scriptable objects. So my scriptable object need to have a prefab, sprite, and object name, and that's what's happening here. So if I go into my scriptable object, it has these food items, and if I click on that, they have all of the things that I had defined in that script. And then I have scripts called kitchen object itself and kitchen object parent. Here, this is basically an interface which is defining that any class that sort of implements this interface needs to have these methods defined in it. And any different script that I'll be showing you will have these functions defined in it. Yeah. So here I have base counter, I have clear counter, and I have container counter. And you can see how this counter is extending this class, this interface, sorry, iKitchen object parent. And it's sort of like defining different methods in it. All this is doing is basically trying to see which object. So for example, if a player is moving a food item around, right? So if the player has the food item or a table has a food item. And by that, what I mean is you can see in my game, if a player is picking something and then after that they're not able to pick anything again, even though I'm pressing the key. And same thing is happening here. If I keep something on this table and I go back and pick something out again and try to keep it back on this table, I can't do that. So all of these different checks are being maintained on different kind of scripts, and we are making sure that this is being read from these sort of like different methods. So yeah, that's what's happening on base counter, clear counter, the same thing. If the parent, whoever the parent is, parent is. If the counter is a parent or the player is a parent, you check which one has a kitchen object. If it doesn't have a kitchen object, then we give them a kitchen object. If it has a kitchen object, then we don't give it a kitchen object. That's what's happening here. And again, container counter, same thing is happening here. If it doesn't have a kitchen object, then we want the player to have a kitchen object, which is happening in the script. And have I covered everything? I think I have. Apart from that, I also have different player animations that are attached to different game objects. So if you see this ghost, it's sort of like moving up, right? So this is attached in my animator. I have different animators for all these objects. So I have one animator for my ghost, I have one animator for both my monsters. So if you look at that mummy on the side, it's sort of like moving its hand. So that's an animation attached to it. And then I also have the bat keeps on moving away. But yeah, how you see its wings are moving. So again, that has an animation attached to it as well. And all of that is being maintained by these different animations. I think that's it. I tried to go really fast, and I'm so sorry if it's a bit too fast. But yeah, you can always refer to the bigger video if this was not clear. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here before it reaches 20 minutes again. So thank you.